So the home is a place where we learn. Now clearly if we're learning, it means we're going to make mistakes. But the point is that we learn how to control ourselves in the family, in the home, as God has designed it. Now there is a massive 25-year study of the effects of divorce on children. Written by some professors at the University of California at Berkeley. These are not religious people. They're all three of them are women. They're not religious. I don't know what religion they are, but they're not particularly religious. But they have looked at the effects of divorce on children, beginning from the time their parents divorced, and it did not matter what the income level was, it did not matter what the educational level was, it did not matter what the religion was of the parents. And then they looked at how they were doing 5 years later, 10 years later, 15 years later, 25 years later. 25 years after divorce, these writers, these women say that children experience an intense inner conflict 25 years after their mom and dad divorced. They were afraid of repeating their parents' mistakes while searching for lasting love. Many were either avoiding commitment or jumping impulsively into relationships with troubled people they hardly knew. These professors write that it's an abiding myth that divorce is a minor upheaval and a normal occurrence in the lives of children and adults. And these women say, they're professors and sociologists, these women say that the impact of divorce on children startled even them. They did not realize how negatively divorce impacted children even until they were in their 30s. And here's 4 reasons why they said that divorce impacted children. First of all, children identify obviously with their mother and father, but our children also identify with the relationship between us. Our children learn how to deal with other people by watching how mom and dad deal with each other. Number 2. They said that a divorced family is not a truncated version of the two-parent family. It is a different kind of family. Children feel less stable and less secure when mom and dad have gone through a divorce, and consequently they grow up being more pessimistic and more unsure of themselves. Why? Because the foundation has been knocked out from under them. The foundation of our children's lives is the relationship between mom and dad. And when it is destroyed, the children don't know what to do. Because they don't experience just the loss of one of their parents. Children who go through divorce also experience the loss of aunts and uncles. And they go through the loss of grandmas and grandpas. They go through the loss of a stable home. You might say, well, yeah, but they also gain more grandmas and grandpas and everything. But that ignores the turmoil that they go through and the chaos that has happened in their lives when all of that's going on. Number 3, these researchers say that divorce ruptures parenting from the contract that began the relationship in the first place. And so children feel less protected. They feel less stable. If daddy doesn't maintain the agreement that he made with mama 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 or whatever, then what is stable in society? Who is dependable in society if mom and dad can't keep their word? And of course, as the divorce is happening, dad stops focusing on the kids, he starts focusing on himself. Mama stops focusing on the kids and she starts focusing on herself. And what happens to the kids? They get forgotten. And number 4, some children, of course, become stronger because they have to rely on themselves. But more often than not, it creates children who believe that nobody's looking out for me. Daddy's not looking out for me. Mama doesn't look out for me. I've got to look out for myself. And now what have you got? You've got an adult who believes that he or she has to look out for themselves. And you've got an adult who is selfish and self-centered. Now what kind of society are we going to have in another 30 years when we've got 2 or 3 generations growing up and experiencing those kind of things? That was the fear of these authors when they wrote this book. What happens when you don't have a healthy family? Well, the Hebrew family was stable for 1,000 years throughout the Old Testament. Moms were respected in the home. Children were brought up, taught the Word of God in the home, and the family was stable. But when the Roman Empire came in, with their lax views of marriage and their very liberal laws on divorce and their practicing of exposure, which was the first century version of abortion, they didn't kill baby in the womb, they let the baby be born and then they just left it out for the animals to get, or bad weather to get. And so when that society came in, it began to influence the Hebrew families. And they started disintegrating. And you just about won't read a history of the fall of the Roman Empire that will not attribute at least part of the problem to the destruction of the family. And that great Roman Empire fell in 476 AD. So we've got evidence from history that illustrates how important the family is. Now, what are some of the things that we are having to fight against in our society? What are the headwinds that we're fighting against? Number one among a long list is secular humanism. What is secular humanism? Humanism is the idea that human beings have a lot of potential, and we can reach that potential. But secular humanism says that we can reach our own potential without God. I don't need God. I am my own God. I can pull myself up by my own bootstraps. And our children are fed that constantly in school. It doesn't have to be psychology textbooks. You don't have to have God in your life. And so when you don't have God, of course, then you turn to evolution to explain where everything came from. So secular humanism is one of the headwinds that we face. Homosexuality is one of the headwinds that we face. Because any time you have an attitude that says God's definition of a home is not necessary, that's what homosexual marriage says, then you're destroying the family. When you redefine what marriage is, then you destroy the definition of marriage by God's definition. And homosexuality is at its core selfishness. It is at its core a desire to fulfill my own desires, to fulfill my own pleasures, and I really don't care what God says, and I don't care what my family says, I don't care what anybody says, I'm going to do what makes me feel good, and at its core, that's what homosexuality is. Now, we would have to ignore 30, 40, 50 years of research that says families need a dad in the home, families need a mom in the home. We have to ignore all of that research to say that it doesn't matter if children grow up in a homosexual marriage. A third headwind that our families face in American society today is women's organizations. Like NARAL, Planned Parenthood. A lot of these radical women's organizations, they're no longer, they started off fighting for equal rights for women, but they are no longer just wanting equal rights for women. Most of them now are saying we don't even need men. Society doesn't even need men. Of course, you may have to go somewhere to get something to have children, but you really don't need men. And men are a drag on the home, and men are a drag on women. And that's what these women's organizations are fighting for today. And then, of course, one of the headwinds is domestic violence. We do not overtly encourage domestic violence in our society, but we covertly encourage domestic violence in our society. With the violence in video games and the violence that we see on TV, our children are growing up learning that if you lose your temper or if you have a problem, then you lash out. You punch somebody or you shoot somebody. You see, all of that is encouraging a lack of self-control. And so wives suffer from it, and domestic abuse, men suffer from it, children obviously suffer from it. And our society, as I said, covertly encourages that very thing. So it is no surprise that our society is suffering from violence in schools and in the home, drug addiction, teenage pregnancy, the high tax burden because now we've got to pay social workers to try to help repair the damage done to little children's psyche because of bad parenting. We're paying a high price in our society for the disintegration of the family down through the last several decades. Well, what can we do about it? That's what you want to know. What can we do about it? Let me briefly run through some things, and all of these are common sense. All of these are things you already know. First of all, we've got to keep our head in the book. We've got to keep our feet in the Word of God. we've got to make sure that we as daddy or mom live Christ's teachings and principles in our lives. We've got to keep our minds in the Word of God. Second of all, we need to teach these principles to our children. Again, we go back to Deuteronomy chapter 6 in the law of Moses, where God tells moms and dads, you teach your children the Bible when they wake up and when they go to bed. And you talk to them about it all during the day. And there are opportunities that we as parents have that we oftentimes let slip away to teach our children biblical principles. I don't know how many times we've quoted the golden rule to the girls. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. You cannot improve on that as a basic principle to govern all life. But there's lots of other principles that we can teach our children. We're watching TV. If you like to watch TV, even something as pure and holy, and I use those words loosely, as the Andy Griffith Show. You can pause it and say, okay, Andy Griffith is telling a little white lie here, which society thinks is okay. God says you're condemned if you tell any lie. So how can Andy Griffith get out of this tight spot that he's in without telling a lie? Perfect example of teaching children real-world thinking based on biblical principles. If you want to do it watching TV, we've got to teach our children, because the devil is doing it if we don't. Number 3, we have to teach our children to marry Christians. If our number 1 goal in life is to get to heaven, then our number 2 goal is to marry somebody who's going to help me get to heaven. Rather than choosing somebody who is either antagonistic towards that decision or indifferent to that decision. We need to teach our children from the time that they are old enough to even think about marriage that they need to find somebody who's going to help them go to heaven. And marriage counselors will tell you that their studies are numerous that say that a religiously mixed marriage is more likely to end in divorce than a religiously united marriage. Number 4, when our children do get married or plan to get married, we need to encourage them to go through premarital counseling. Now sometimes we think, I don't need it. But it sure does help. To encourage our children to either go to older Christians and help them work through what it means to get married and what's expected out of me, or to the preacher. I had a lady ask me last Thursday at the food pantry, would you perform a wedding ceremony? I said, yes, I won't charge anything for it, but you'll have to go through 8 or 10 hours of premarital counseling. You'd be surprised how many people back out when they are told that. I will not marry somebody without going through 6, 8, 10 hours of premarital counseling trying to help them understand that the decision you're about to make, number 1, is a permanent decision. It's supposed to be permanent. And number 2, it's going to take a lot out of it. Marriage is not a receiving relationship entirely. It is a giving relationship. And you have to be prepared to give. Those of us who are married know that. You've got to be prepared to give and to give and to give some more. And a lot of young people are getting into marriage and don't realize it. They get into marriage saying, well, this is somebody who meets my needs. Well, that's fine and good, but what are you going to give to them? So we need to encourage our children who are getting married, go through premarital counseling. And then, number 5, we ought to do what we can to vote for people in the political offices who will support God's definition of marriage. Now, I'm not saying I know everything that ought to be done, but I do know, number 1, divorce is too easy. And number 2, we have too many divorces in our society. Now, some state legislatures are beginning to make laws that say before you can remarry after divorce, you're going to have a waiting period. It's a good thing. Some legislatures are even thinking about requiring premarital counseling so we can head it off to the past. And I really like that idea. Before the state will give a marriage license, you've got to go to a preacher or a counselor or somebody and get so many hours of premarital counseling. So you'll know what you're getting into and you'll know what's expected out of you as a father and as a mother. That's a great idea. But our society has it all wrong. Our society punishes marriage through our tax laws, for example. You have to pay more in taxes as a married couple than you do